The first people to write down the history of Japan were actually from China, and they thought the Japanese were incredibly strange. They described a land where people lived for 100 years and walked around barefoot even in the middle of winter. For a long time, we knew almost nothing about what was happening on these islands because nobody there was writing anything down. The early history of Japan is like a giant puzzle with most of the pieces missing or buried deep underground in the mud. If you go back far enough, you find the Jomon people who were living in Japan more than 14,000 years ago. These people were amazing artists who made some of the oldest clay pots ever found in the entire world. They didn't use wheels to make these pots, but instead they built them up by hand, using long snakes of wet clay. To make them look pretty, they took pieces of rope and pressed them into the soft sides to leave behind wavy patterns. This is actually why we call them the Jomon, because the word literally means cord marks in the Japanese language. The Jomon didn't live in big cities or have kings, but they stayed in small villages where they built houses inside holes in the ground. These pit houses had straw roofs that kept them warm in the winter and cool when the summer sun was beating down. They spent their days hunting deer and gathering nuts, and they were so good at it that they lived this way for thousands of years. But everything changed around 3,000 years ago when a new group of people arrived from the mainland of Asia. These new people are called the Yayoi, and they brought three things with them that changed the history of Japan forever. They brought the knowledge of how to grow rice in wet fields and how to work with metals like bronze and iron. Rice might not sound very exciting to us today, but back then, it was like discovering a way to print money. When you grow rice, you can grow a lot of it at once, and you can store it in big barns to eat during the winter. This meant that some people could become very rich, while other people stayed poor, which led to the first big fights over land. Before this, everyone was mostly equal, but now we start to see the first signs of real power and social classes. The Yayoi started building wooden fences and deep ditches around their villages because they were afraid of their neighbors. Archaeologists have found ancient skeletons from this time that have arrowheads stuck in the bones, which shows how violent it got. While all of this was happening in the forests of Japan, the nearby Han Dynasty in China was keeping very careful notes. The Chinese called the people of Japan the Wa, which was their name for a group of over 100 small tribes. In these old Chinese books, they say the Wa people were very polite and followed the rules, but they had tattoos all over their bodies. They also noticed that the Japanese people loved to drink alcohol and would often start dancing and singing whenever they got together. One of the most famous stories from these records is about a mysterious woman named Queen Himiko, who ruled over 30 tribes. The story goes that the land had been at war for many years until the people finally decided to put a woman in charge. Himiko was a shaman queen who stayed hidden inside a massive palace protected by hundreds of armed guards and towers. She supposedly had 1,000 female servants to help her, but only one single man was allowed to see her face. This man acted as her messenger to tell the rest of the world what the queen wanted them to do. She spent most of her time talking to spirits and practicing magic, instead of dealing with the boring parts of running a country. In the year 239, she sent a group of messengers to China to give the emperor some colorful cloth and gold. The Chinese emperor was so happy that he gave her a special title and a bunch of bronze mirrors to show his friendship. But there is a huge problem that historians have been arguing about for over 100 years regarding this queen. The Chinese records give specific directions on how to find her kingdom, which was called Yamatai, but the directions don't make sense. If you follow the directions exactly as they are written, you would end up floating in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Because of this error, half of the experts think her kingdom was on the southern island of Kyushu, near the mainland. The other half think she lived in the central part of Japan, near the modern cities of Nara and Kyoto. We still haven't found her actual grave, so the mystery of where this powerful magic queen lived remains unsolved today. After the time of Queen Himiko, the small tribes of Japan started to join together into one big, powerful state called Yamato. This is when we enter the period of the giant tombs, which are some of the most impressive things ever built by humans. If you look at Japan from a plane today, you can still see these massive mounds of earth, shaped like giant keyholes. The biggest one is the tomb of Emperor Nintoku, and it is actually much longer than the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. It took thousands of workers over 15 years to build this single tomb by carrying baskets of dirt on their backs. Inside these tombs, the leaders were buried with beautiful gold crowns and iron swords, and even armor for their horses. They also placed thousands of clay figures called haniwa on top of the mounds to act as spiritual guards for the dead. These figures look like soldiers in houses and boats, and they give us a great look at what life was like back then. As the Yamato state grew stronger, they started to borrow even more ideas from their neighbors in China and Korea. They brought over the Chinese writing system, which meant they could finally start writing down their own stories and laws. Before this, they had to memorize every single thing and pass it down by talking, which is how things get forgotten. Around the year 552, a group of monks arrived from Korea and brought a golden statue of the Buddha. This was a huge deal, because it started a massive fight between the families who liked the old gods and the families who liked the new religion. The Soga family were the ones who supported Buddhism, and they eventually won a big battle that changed Japanese culture forever. One of the most important people during this time was Prince Shotoku, who is famous for writing the first set of rules for the government. He wanted the leaders of Japan to act like gentlemen and stop fighting all the time, so he used ideas from Chinese philosophy. He also built beautiful wooden temples like Horyuji, which is still standing today and is the oldest wooden building in the world. Eventually, the Japanese leaders decided they wanted to have a permanent capital city instead of moving the palace every time a king died. They built a city called Nara that was modeled after the great capital of China, with wide streets and giant wooden palaces. This is where the very first books of Japanese history were finally written down, including the ones called the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki. These books tell the stories of how the islands were created by two gods who dipped a spear into the ocean to make land. They also track the family tree of the emperors all the way back to the sun goddess, which is why the emperor is so important in Japan. Even though some of these stories are myths, they are the first time the Japanese people told their own story in their own words. By the time these books were finished, Japan had transformed from a group of scattered tribes into a sophisticated and organized nation. The journey from making rope-marked pots to building giant keyhole tombs and writing philosophy took thousands of years of hard work. The earliest records show us a world full of magic and mystery, but they also show us how much people can achieve when they work together.